Welcome to The World Today. I'm Vikas Majid Khan. Today we have two stories in our program. In the first segment, we're going to talk about the Indian leader's provocative remarks under political compulsions, and they are a threat to regional peace, says the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Qureshi. We'll talk about that in some detail. And our second segment concerns sexual harassment and an ombudsman who has been appointed to deal with these issues. We'll talk about that in some detail as well. Let me introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me for the conversation, first of all, we have Brigadier Shahid Jagir Saab with us. Joining him, we have Shahryar Khan, and with him we have Tughrul Yamin Saab. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Shahid Saab, I'll start with you. The statement of the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi on Saturday, he criticized the Indian leadership and also gave a warning regarding their provocative and negative statements. He said that it was a domestic political compulsion which made them utter those statements. But do you feel that Pakistan bashing is still something that the Indian public buys into in terms of voting for a party? So I think that it seems with the passage of time, this card, the Pakistan card, is not going to be very effective going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there are a couple of reasons for this Indian belligerence. First of all is the political reason for that. As you have said that in the forthcoming election, they are going to use this Hindutva card. Now BJP's vote bank is about between 20 to 25% of the upper and middle class Hindus. With this proportion of the vote casting and the vote bank, it's not possible that BJP would win this election. So this election is going to be a very strong, contest between the BJP and the other parties, in which probably the small parties will be the one who would be making a difference. Now, what they want to do over here is that BJP government is appearing to be tough to the Pakistan right after they came into the power. And they are using this Hindu card as their winning situation for India. So this is one reason that they would be going. The second is their disappointment in the Indian occupied Kashmir, that they are unable to control the freedom movement over there, as well as the freedom movements of Maos which are there on the eastern side. They are totally frustrated. 150 soldiers have been killed of the Indian army in the last year, and they are, despite their violation of the line of control, which has been increased 55% during the last year, and also the threats and an inconceived idea of having conducted a surgical strike, and which we have seen the Modi has given in the last interview with the ANI. The third thing is that the Indians' belief of this misconception or belief that they are the regional powers. It is they think that they are the one who can counter China. That they have capitalized a lot on this China card with the getting military and economic aid from the US.
Yeah, but I think that is also now changing, sir. But coming back to the regional situation, and especially when we talk about the statements made by the foreign minister, he said that Pakistan is a peace-loving country and we have no aggressive designs against anyone, and we want a resolution of all our outstanding issues, particularly Kashmir, through peaceful means. Now that is the message that has gone out from the foreign minister, but he has also said that this should not be misconstrued as a weakness, and Pakistan will respond to any misadventure. So how should one be reading this statement by the foreign minister in terms of the global political climate, sir?
If you recall the interview of Prime Minister Modi, Indian Prime Minister Modi, he also said the same thing, that we want to resolve the issues peacefully, but we would also can reconsider, maybe strategic strikes again with the Pakistan. I think it's a rebuttal to that if you want to have peace talks, so we are ready for peace talks, and Pakistan is also a peace-loving country. And this is, in fact, Pakistan was the one who initiated, this whole process that we should start talking to India. But if India is threatening Pakistan as well, so Pakistan is ready for that as well, and it should not be considered as weakness. But if you consider this into this press brief or interview of our foreign minister, it tells us something that maybe for the next 1 year we should not expect anything from India in terms of initiation of any dialogue, because there are domestic compulsions, and there is a section of Indian society which responds to Pakistan bashing, and there is a section of Indian media which does that, and which appeals to the public. And the BJP, since it has its politics is populist.
Does it really appeal to the public, sir? Because it doesn't seem so. If you look at what happened in the recent state elections, BJP suffered an ignominious defeat because of the same rhetoric. People did not buy into it. So
Well,
this is
I think the problem with the populism.
It's more to do with media propaganda than the people themselves.
Yeah, this is something, with the populism. The BJP government is also populist government. Populist government usually they don't have a real solution for the real problems. What they do is they do divisive politics. Issues based on their identity. They do the identity politics, and they believe that it will work. For the first time, it can work with the people. But after 5 years, if the people don't see an improvement in their lives or in the quality of life, then they get bored with the rhetorical things and ideological and identity politics. They get bored with that, and they probably then don't vote them. It happens. It has happened over other countries as well. I think the Indian policy regarding Pakistan is something it's not limited just to what Narendra Modi has said or some political statements come out of India. It's more institutional. In India, it's more institutional regarding Pakistan. In the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen that institutionally there is that kind of inertia now in Indian foreign policy making regarding Pakistan, that we have not to engage it, we have to go on offensive against Pakistan.
This isolationist policy.
Isolationist policy. So this is quite institutional. Now institutional policy takes time to change, so we cannot expect the Indian leaders to come out one day and they say, okay, let's start talking. I think it would need some time to change Indian policy, and I don't see that direction coming from the top to that institutional change, from Narendra Modi and his foreign office team. We don't see that coming. There are hawks in that foreign policy making, and it will take time. If we see some ice broken there, especially when they are more focused now on their own election for the next 1 year, and there Pakistan bashing or threatening or some political statement against Pakistan, they can come up. I think it will be a routine, and we can expect that from coming. And that's why probably in Pakistan as well, now the decision makers or, even the intellectuals, they're waiting, for the new government, to take in office in India. And then after that, probably we can go forward with our peace overtures or our proposals.
That remains to be seen.
Yes.
Well, Yamin Saab, Mr. Qureshi has also urged the international community to ask the Indian leadership to refrain from spewing negative propaganda and to muddy the already quite murky water which is between India and Pakistan. Pakistan wants peace, stability, and progress for the region, which is not possible in a hostile environment. Do you think that the international community has any weight with the Indians? Do you think they can talk to them in those terms and say, okay, you need to tone down this rhetoric? Or do you think that it's really going to fall on deaf ears?
You're quite right. It's going to fall on deaf ears. The international community is not interested. The international community is not interested in what is happening in Kashmir. The international community, if the international community means the United States of America, are interested in peace in Afghanistan. And there is that's where they want Pakistan to help them. Trump, despite his ill-tempered tweets and ill-tempered messages, still wants to engage with our new leadership, and there is a possibility that there's some kind of negotiations might take place. So they will not talk to India. They would rather want Pakistan to help them in Afghanistan. But going back to our foreign minister's statement rejecting what the Indians have said, that Pakistan would be launching surgical strikes. So this is very, very strange, because surgical strikes, we have never talked about surgical strikes. It was the Indian Army chief who had said that in 2016 that they had conducted the so-called surgical strikes, and then in 2018 he said, I'll repeat those surgical strikes. Pakistan has never talked about surgical strikes. So saying that Pakistan can't undertake surgical strikes, because before that they used to talk about Pakistan-sponsored insurgency. That was the word that they would use, and they would say that if there is another act of terrorism in India, they're going to strike back. And since, thank God, no attack has taken place.
But they're also, sir, very adept at making or creating false flag operations and blaming them on Pakistan, doing it themselves, and it's an oldest trick in the book, sir. So how do we counter that?
I'm just trying to make out why. You see, this is not the campaigning season. This is the end of campaigning season, because, or middle of the season when operations come to a halt because of snows falling in Kashmir and other places. This is not typically the campaigning season. It comes when thaw takes place and when the armies can move, particularly in the glaciated areas or in other areas.
But in spite of that, sir, we've seen an increase in LOC violations. Even today there was an LOC violation. We've been seeing repeated violations and innocent civilians being targeted.
Right, but at the lower foothills of Kashmir, you see, there you can, there the local population is close to the line of control, you can, or the line of, or even the working boundary, there you can fire upon people who are near to the border and kill them. But saying that Pakistan will launch, this is strange. This is strange. They have never said that before. They've been talking about Pakistan-sponsored insurgency or Pakistan-sponsored terror attacks. This time they have used a different approach. Pakistan launching, how can you create a false flag operation for that? Clothe them in Pakistani uniforms, and this is very fanciful. And another thing which needs to be looked at very critically is the kind of problems that the Indians are having with their own local Muslim population. Naseeruddin Shah has recently made a very remark which has caused furore in the domestic politics. He said that I do not know the future of my children, because you can lynch, a crowd can lynch an innocent man for the killing of a cow, but you kill him, he's not safe, the cow is being made a cause celebre.
There was a judge also who made a statement regarding that, so which was very important.
Absolutely. So they have a very large Muslim population, and so I do not know whether they're trying to divert the attention from Kashmir and the local Muslim population.
So do you think that it's the failure of the BJP government as a whole, which now they are trying to cover up using the same old Pakistan card and trying to play on the base emotions of the public and trying to whip up a frenzy against Pakistan? But I think this time it might be a failing strategy.
Perhaps.
Sir, moving forward, Pakistan also says that we are focusing on our efforts to bring stability to Afghanistan. And that is what the entire international community is also trying to do. And Pakistan is playing a frontline, very important role in making that happen. But the Indian propaganda that is continuing is diverting Pakistan's attention to that effort. And for that, Mr. Qureshi said that the international community should play a role. Do you see that role being played by the international community or no?
Okay. I think probably a ray of hope is coming where, things are being, coming up. Now, the important thing is that, as I said, that the present Indian leadership frustration is a mix of, arrogance and their, hopelessness. Arrogance in the sense that they want to tell their public that, that might India, an incredible India.
Shining India.
Shining India. I read in that day that yes, rapist, violent, country having no value for human rights, rising India.
So the shining India is quite dulling now, I suppose.
Now, the second point over here is, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, India had a lot of hope. India has overtly pumped in about a couple of millions of dollars in constructing dams and roads in Afghanistan.
But interestingly, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but President Trump recently also made a comment regarding Mr. Narendra Modi.
I'm exactly coming on that. That overtly they have committed a couple of millions of dollars in that, and covertly they have pumped a lot of money to sponsor the terrorism in Pakistan. Probably, this is my personal opinion, I have not much of the evidence of that. The American told the Indians to put the boots on the ground.
But sir, hold that thought, sir. We need to take a short break right here. When we return, we will continue the conversation from right here. So just take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back after the break. Sir, you were talking about the boots on the ground presence that is requested by the US, but that was refused by India. And moving forward, you were saying, sir?
Yes, now that is what the recent statement of President Trump
implied
about the library and all. No, that is in this context that you don't do anything much about us, and you talk of this. Second thing is that probably the world community and the Americans have realized that who are the real players who can bring peace in Afghanistan, and who is the key player of this. The regional players and the key player. And that is why you see that, immediately after a very arrogant tweet, there was a letter. And now there are, calls that Mr. Trump wants to meet our Prime Minister. So this is a big change. Anything which goes in the favor of Pakistan is never seen good in the eyes of the Indians.
Right.
So this is a very, very important factor that India is being isolated in Afghanistan.
Very interesting development, sir. Despite India's best efforts to isolate Pakistan, they have failed miserably in that endeavor. Talking of which, sir, what do you think about Pakistan's latest overtures in terms of, number one, the Kartarpur border opening for the temple, and then recently Pakistan has also declared a Hindu site as a heritage site.
Yes.
So you see that the Pakistani government is making an effort to assimilate the minority population of Hindus in the country and improve their status in the country, while in India we are seeing a negative trend where Muslims are being targeted for even touching a cow. So how do you think the international community is viewing these changes that are taking place on the ground?
Well, if on the global agenda, probably they don't figure. But if you look at the international diplomacy, and when it comes to conflicts and resolution of the conflict, of course, these are major steps in that direction. And of course, they should appreciate Pakistan efforts. On the one hand, you have seen India, which is becoming intolerant of minorities. On the other hand, you have a country which is Islamic Republic of Pakistan,
do you think
but which is more open-hearted. It has a more open-hearted approach towards minority. And we were also receiving criticism for some time that minorities are fleeing Pakistan because of the terrorism. But now the terrorism is in control in Pakistan, and Pakistan government is taking some initiatives, to make sure that minorities are not only protected, but their religious sites are also protected and they're facilitated.
And do you think that this effort that the Pakistani government has made in terms of securing the rights of minorities and their places of worship is also going to generate goodwill across the border among the people of India, and therefore they'll be able to see through the negative propaganda and the rhetoric which the BJP government is using to damage Pakistan?
Well, of course they will, because it's a kind of soft diplomacy or soft power. This is how you address the people of that country if the government is not listening to you. And we are addressing the people of the country that they can come to Pakistan, to the religious sites, and we have facilitated now this Kartarpur where they don't even need to have a visa. They can come there. So it's a kind of giving a message to the people. And I think it's one of the tools with the governments when they practice diplomacy and try to tell their side of the story to the people of the country. Then the people, they cannot be misguided by their own governments regarding that country. Because in the case of India and Pakistan, a huge population of India, which is Sikh population, and even the Hindus, they have religious sites here in Pakistan, and they keep visiting Pakistan, so they can't do without Pakistan. All their religious sites are here, a lot of them. So it's a giving a message to the people that Pakistan is not that a country that is being portrayed in their media or by their governments, and probably it will create a peace constituency in that country, and these people then would exert pressure on their relevant constituencies and their MPs that they should improve relation with Pakistan, because improvement in relation with Pakistan would facilitate their travel to Pakistan, would ease their travel problems with Pakistan. Because, for instance, if there is a bad relationship between the countries, there is a visa problem between it ensues by then the visa problem between the two countries, and the people from Pakistan cannot get Indian visa, then we have to reciprocate that. Then it creates problem for the Indian nationals, especially those pilgrims who want to come to Pakistan, so they can pressurize in their own government to have good relationship with Pakistan. But of course, it's a kind of a long term. The soft diplomacy is always for long term when we engage the public and the people. It should go hand in hand with your mainstream, diplomacy that we do. And Pakistan, I think, has done that. At the moment, we see a lull because there is no headway in that direction. But in a lot of other places, Pakistan is making its headways diplomatically.
It is India that is constantly stonewalling Pakistan's efforts to create a dialogue and to address the issues between us. When do you think the Indians will be able to see the folly of this, this policy of not engaging with Pakistan, sir? Do you have any hopes after the elections if the BJP government does not come back in power and we have a new government in India? Do you think that there might be some progress in that direction, sir?
Waqas, unfortunately, most of the people who are at the helm of affairs in India, irrespective of the political hues, irrespective of which side of the political divide they stand, they do play to the domestic hawks. And going soft on Pakistan usually is at a lot of peril to their future as a politician, future as a political party.
But at the same time, sir, if you see what's happening in Kashmir and then what's happening in other parts of India.
It is in their interest. It is in their interest. I do not know who will come to power. Maybe Modi comes back again to power, despite the reverses in state elections. I'm not very sure. Rahul Gandhi is yet to prove his mark as a political heavyweight. His mother did not become the Prime Minister. She instead had that accidental Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, to sit there because she was not Indian enough. Rahul Gandhi has not come up as a mature political leader, and I do not see any heavyweight in the Congress camp. So I really do not know who will become the next Prime Minister. It might be a divided house, it might be a hung parliament. And when there's a hung parliament, there's all the more problem that you cannot take hardcore decisions on Pakistan. But 70 years of constant hostility, constant bickering, non-productivity, holding the two nations hostage to the threat of nuclear war is not good. And I think within India also many people understand that. And as Dr. Sharia very correctly pointed out, there is a growing peace constituency within India. So common man, I think, at all levels want peace. Political elites do not want peace. Mr. Imran Khan gave a very good statement when he became the Prime Minister. He said he wants peace. Narendra Modi responded very negatively, calling about the evil agenda of Khan Saab and other things. They are stupid remarks, I think, in
undiplomatic language.
High statecraft, you don't use such. Where any remark which is made in good taste should be responded or reciprocated in the same manner. So hopefully whoever comes to power, Mr. Modi 2.0 will not be pro-Pakistan in any case, because we know his political leanings. He will go to Bangladesh and present that surrender photograph to Hasina Wajid, who's again conducted a election which has been criticized by all and sundry that it was not fair, and she's put everybody in jail. So 2.0, Modi, no. Yes, Rahul Gandhi or anybody else or hung government, maybe there is a chance that they might start talking to Pakistan again. Difficult, but again, quality of our leadership also matters. I think many times our leadership also responds in a very knee-jerk manner. We don't have to.
Well, let's hope, sir, that 2019 seems to be the end of Pakistan bashing for India's own benefit.
Hopefully, or more than that, it should be a year that Pakistan should be able to play its diplomatic cards in a more nuanced manner.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, that's all the conversation for our first segment, and our second segment, which is about sexual harassment, will follow after a short break. Stay with us.
Magla Hills, the heaven of Islamabad, the abode of God, a place where you can explore your soul and meet power of natural elegance of mountains. Spread over an area of 12,605 hectares, the Magla Range, the foothills of Himalayas, our youngest hills with an age of 5,000 years old. Magla Hills are home to around 600 plant species, 250 bird varieties, 38 mammals, and 13 species of reptiles. Margla range is characterized by many valleys, scenic spots, and beautiful water streams, especially in the monsoon months.
Welcome back after the break, and now we're talking about the sexual harassment in the workplace bill that has been passed after much delay. The KP government has finally approved the appointment of an ombudsperson for sexual, or rather anti-sexual harassment. Sindh and Punjab had already done that previously, but Balochistan still remains to do that. We hope that they take it up very soon and implement this as well. We have with us Rehan Seerath, who's a lawyer and is also dealing with these issues. Rehan, talking about the role of the ombudsperson, how important is it to have an ombudsperson for sexual harassment? Are these cases not dealt with previously, or what additions to the law need to be made to make it even more watertight?
You see, the law was already there, but people really didn't know which forum to go to. Like if there was a government department and someone was facing such harassment, they actually used to complain it to the high-ups, but nothing used to happen, because obviously they used to think that the perpetrator was one of the officers. So why to take action? The typical approach which people have, just let it go and all that. But by having an ombudsman, it is actually a forum which can be approached. It's more like going to the court. It's a quasi-judicial forum, and once you go there, you file a complaint. Then, in other words, you're in the safe hands, because then the ombudsman has certain powers. It can direct the same department to either conduct an inquiry, or it may even pass a direction to take appropriate action against the person, against the perpetrator. And certain amendments have been there, like even in Pakistan Penal Code, which deals, which brings the criminal liability to this very offence, which actually makes it a criminal offence. There's been amendment in that also, and now earlier it was just it really didn't have the criminal liability with it, but now it does have after the amendment, and that is why having an ombudsman is better, because there's a lesser chance of not getting the justice.
Well, Rehan, talking about our society, unfortunately, sexual harassment is prevalent in our society in varying degrees, and we need to talk about this issue and create awareness. In your opinion, do you think that not enough attention is paid to this particular issue, and that is also the reason why we don't have so much women's participation in our workforce, which is important for a country's overall economic development?
Well, now they are paying quite a lot of attention to it. Earlier, there wasn't much. Like I said, that there has been they've attached the criminal liability towards it also, and they are creating awareness through various programs and various workshops and all. But earlier it wasn't there. So I do believe that they are doing the right stuff, but the problem arises that people really don't know. People think they won't get the justice. Like having an ombudsman, it's a positive approach.
Because it's difficult for women to actually approach the ombudsman, because it also brings a bad name.
A bad name, yeah.
And there are many issues associated
Exactly.
with this particular problem.
Yeah.
Well, we've also been joined by Barrister Hamna on the phone. She's with us online. Let's get her opinion on how to deal with this particular issue. Thank you very much, Barrister Hamna, for joining us. In your opinion, do you think that we are dealing with this particular issue in an effective manner? How many cases of sexual harassment or this nature do you deal with on a daily basis?
Okay, so Vikas, first of all, I would like to tell you that there are two avenues under Pakistani law. Number one is, which was previously discussed in your show, that criminal. So there is criminal avenue under Section 509 Pakistan Penal Code, through which you can file in criminal proceedings. But it's a very lengthy procedure, it's very costly, and then female complainants mostly encounter a very deeply patriarchal and discriminatory system. And the other development, which was in 2010, which is under the civil law protection, the protection against harassment of workplace at women. So that act, through that act, you basically every organization in Pakistan, whether it's a multinational, it's a government or semi-government, needs to adopt a very clear and a defined code of ethics policy, and the timelines are very strict. So they provide a very strict timeline. But as far as your question is concerned, that how many cases, I've been working in companies, multinational companies, for the past 7 years, and to be honest, there are so many cases that I encounter day to day. And in fact, in my previous company, I was working as a ethics and compliance officer, where I was involved in. I took decisions on these kind of cases. So there were around 30 to 40 every month. These kind of incidents, and it's very difficult to prove. The problem with these kind of cases, sexual harassment cases, is very difficult to prove, and because they're basically different kinds of harassment. That it's not only sexual harassment. There's visual harassment, there's verbal, there's written. Then there of course is physical. So when we talk about the verbal or visual, so it's very hard to basically, women to or men. So both are harassed. It's very hard for them to record evidence.
Please stay with us on the line, Barrister Hamna. We'll come back to you for more views. But right now, I want to ask Rehan this question. Rehan, the fear of harassment or potential harassment effectively keeps women out of the workforce, especially in a society which is conservative like ours. It's very difficult for women or even parents, fathers or brothers don't allow their sisters or their wives or their daughters to join the workforce because of fear of sexual harassment. How do we create the right kind of atmosphere or environment in which this fear should not really be there? I mean, in a civilized society, this should not exist.
Well, first, every organization needs to have, there should be a committee formed which should deal with such cases. And the HR department should also be well equipped with the laws dealing with the workplace environment, workplace harassment. And besides that, you need to actually create awareness for the people who are working there, for the women who are working.
But Rehan, Hamna really raised an important issue, and that is about the difficulty in proving sexual harassment cases. So if it's more of a case of he said, she said, how does one deal with the legal aspects of such a complaint where it's my word against yours?
Well, I myself have been, have chaired certain committee of a government department, and what I observed is that it's good to this is the right approach to actually put the onus on the person who's accusing, because there are, like I said, people are not well aware of what the law says, what actually constitutes harassment. So I've seen cases like in the cases which I've chaired. I've observed that women are just giving sweeping statements. They don't have any base. They are baseless accusations in many cases, because they feel that I remember there was a woman. She said that I don't have a fan in my office, so this constitutes harassment. They said, why do you think so? She said that because this has purposely been done with me, so that I have to go to my boss and ask him to arrange for something like this in my room. So this is kind of something which may lead to harassment. So this may lead is also one thing which many people think that does constitute harassment, which it does not. So I do agree with the fact that we need to educate women about it, that this is what constitutes harassment, this does not constitute harassment. And yes, if they are very sure, they need to be, imagine what the person has to go through who is accused for harassment.
Falsely accused.
Falsely accused.
Obviously, if somebody is accused who is guilty, then that's a different matter.
Yeah, but a person who is falsely accused, because there's a great room for that also. So in such a situation, I do feel that harassment is there, and it's very elaborate law on it, but the person accusing the other person should also be well aware of what actually constitutes harassment. So legally, I think it has been very much been catered to. But as far as this thing is concerned, whether people are well aware of what constitutes harassment or not, this is, I think, where we lack.
Well, I think we should get Hamna's point of view on this particular issue. Hamna, could you please share with us your views whether this question that you also raised about proving sexual harassment, how do we go forward? What is the way to make sure that people are not falsely accused of harassment and it's not something that is used or misused in order to damage somebody else's reputation?
Okay, so firstly, it's not only women that who can abuse or misuse this kind of, law. It could be both ways. And secondly, there is a very, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a very defined and a very detailed definition of workplace harassment under the 2010 Act, which states that any form of verbal, physical, visual conduct, that basically anything that causes interference in or creates hostility in your workplace is harassment. So unfortunately, the law, when it comes to public, a woman or a man being harassed in a public place, then it becomes a bit difficult to establish, because I believe that then you have only one avenue, which is the criminal, when you go to the criminal side. But see, the thing is, falsely, when you talk about somebody who's raising false complaints, so the Act 2010 Act has specifically defined that in case of a false accusation, the person who is basically the complainant will be liable, and he or she will have to pay the penalty. So it does not welcome that kind of, you don't encourage. The whole point of law is not to open floodgates and say that every person, if, for example, if I don't like something at workplace or I'm being harassed, so yes, I agree that there's a very fine line between these two things. Somebody is making jokes, I don't like, that is one incident, then I don't like it again and again. So if there is consistent repetition of that kind of incident, so basically that would be harassment, and then the Act and law covers that if there is something very minor, then the ways and the mechanism is clearly defined, that you go to the inquiry committee, you basically tell them what exactly happened, and could be anonymous as well. So you file your complaint in an anonymous form as well, and then the decision is made. The thing is that there are two kinds of penalties. So if there is something which is very minor, for example, if somebody doesn't like it and making sweeping statements, as Rehan mentioned, that then the committee will not cater that kind of acquisitions. You need to have some sort of proof. So whether it be email, whether it be messages, or in any sort of ways. So yes, I agree that recording of evidence and proof is very difficult, but then the inquiry committee under the Act has a very defined structure and has a strict timeline where they record and hear both sides hearing, and basically the accused has the right to defend himself, and the complainant has the right to show proof
All right.
evidences.
All right. Thank you very much, Hamna, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, Rehan, you heard what Hamna said, but one of the commentators have also pointed out that the wording of the anti-harassment law is very vague, and that also needs to be looked at again. And then there's also the problem of the informal workforce, where a large percentage is made up of women, and who represents them and what rights do they have. That is also something that legislators need to think about. Thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Before we end the program, we would like to say that 16-year-old Etizaz Hassan, who was martyred while averting a suicide attack on his school in Hangu, he is a true hero and proof that our country is blessed with brave and honorable people. Etizaz Hassan's story reflects the nation's reliance, courage, and bravery, and we all salute the bravery of Etizaz Hassan, indeed a true Pakistani hero. And on that note, it's goodbye.